The launch of our new daily Gallup election tracking shows Newt Gingrich in the lead.
A re-election red flag for President Obama.
And the 1% in some ways are just like you and me. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters. Well, Susan, our new daily election tracking at Gallup, which is inaugurating right now this week, we'll have our number every single day from now on based on at least 1,000 Republican registered voters, so big samples, shows, maybe not shockingly, given what we've been seeing in some state polls, Newt Gingrich significantly ahead of Mitt Romney, everybody else way down in single digits. Gingrich the leader.
It's not surprising perhaps from the perspective of the last few days, but from the perspective of even a month ago, it is a remarkable surge for the former Speaker of the House.
Now remember, in our positive intensity numbers, come back to that in a moment, he was high, then he fell down totally in the basement in the summer, and now he's resurrected himself. And to some degree in the trial heat polling that we've been tracking, he was never higher than about 13%, I don't think, but he fell in the basement in that, and now he's back up in the lead in the 30% range. What does this mean? Can he now fall again? I guess that's the key question. We've seen so much of a roller coaster effect for Newt Gingrich and for Herman Cain and for Rick Perry and to a degree for Michelle Bachmann. Is this just an accident waiting to happen for Newt Gingrich and he falls off again?
Well, I think it's certainly possible. We know that voters are not firmly aligned with most of these candidates yet. In the Iowa poll, not part of the Gallup poll, the question which came out this week, the question was, is it possible you'll change your mind? And 7 out of 10 Iowa Republicans who are likely to go to those caucuses on January 3rd said, yeah, it's still possible I'll change my mind. So clearly there's the potential for more turmoil in this race.
And Iowa's critically important because we've gone back and looked at 08 and 04, and guess what? At this point in November and December, before the Iowa caucuses, the eventual winners were nowhere to be seen in the national numbers. Back in 08, Hillary Clinton was 20 points ahead roughly of Obama. John McCain was down there way below Rudy Giuliani and even Mitt Romney in some polling in November back in 07. Go back to 04, John Kerry was way below several Democratic contenders, including Howard Dean, and we know what happened to Howard Dean. So the past would seem to suggest that once people start voting on January the 3rd in Iowa, all this can blow up and we could have brand new leaders.
Right, you can win something like the Iowa caucuses, look like a winner and get ahead of steam, or become the target for your opponents. So yeah, it's early to think that this is going to predict who the nominee is, but it certainly shows us that this race has had a kind of roller coaster quality so far.
It's been amazing. Now Newt Gingrich himself was quoted, wasn't he, saying, I will be the nominee?
He's a very confident guy.
Indeed.
We'll see how that plays. I talked to Mitt Romney's communications director last night, who said that Newt Gingrich has already declared himself the nominee, but he thinks Mitt Romney will stay in the race anyway. Okay. So the Romney people were taking that with a bit of a grain of salt.
One other piece of data that we'll be releasing later this week is expectations, which is also important because we ask Republicans, regardless of whom you support, and as we just said, they support Gingrich significantly over Romney. They tend to say Romney will be the nominee. So we've got Republicans saying, I don't necessarily want to vote for him, but I think he's going to win. Is that good news or bad news for Romney?
Well, it's good news because it's one reason he has some support, but it's also a vulnerability, I think, because if people are supporting you or find you acceptable because they think you're going to be nominated anyway, if they think somebody else they like better actually has a good chance of being nominated, that could really undercut your position. It's a thin kind of support to have.
And speaking of thin support, our positive intensity data, which we will be updating periodically from this point on, but not daily because we're now switching to the actual trial heat, but our positive intensity data, as we've talked about, shows very low support in a strength of support way for Mitt Romney. You watched some focus groups in Virginia last week, same thing, right? Republican voters saying Mitt Romney kind of yick.
This focus group, which was sponsored by the Annenberg Public Policy Center, was like the human face of the positive intensity ratings that we've been talking about on Election Matters, in that there was support for Mitt Romney, but not a lot of warmth, not a lot of connection. One of the questions that Peter Hart, the Democratic pollster who was leading the focus group, asked was, if Mitt Romney were in your family, who would he be? And people said he'd be my second cousin. He'd be the father who was never there. He'd be the rich relative who doesn't bother to come to family events. That isn't the kind of connection that really successful candidates forge with voters.
We're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. It's going to be fascinating. All of these gentlemen and one woman, Michelle Bachmann, who's still in, are going to have to face Barack Obama. Right now, he is, Susan, at the lowest level in our history. Now follow me here. for an elected president in December of his third year. His job approval rating, which is hovering around 42, 44% right now, is lower than everybody's, going back to Dwight Eisenhower, in December of their third year. That doesn't bode well for Obama.
It doesn't. No, it's a little bit of a peculiar measure because Jimmy Carter who was having a lot of trouble with the presidency, had a kind of bump in his approval rating after the American hostages were taken.
In December of
right.
'79, that's right.
And that didn't last, of course. In the end, that crisis turned out to be a negative for President Carter. But it is true that if you look at the historic data, Barack Obama is now in the area where presidents who lose re-election tend to be. You look at the presidents who win re-election, they tend to be at 50% and higher. Barack Obama has been very steadily in the low 40s for the past 4 months.
Yeah, that'll be a real key for the Obama campaign can he inch his approval rating up next year? I mean, it's always possible to have an exception. You know, Bush won with 48. In '04, so it's possible to kind of sneak in, but Obama's not even been near 48 in a long time now, so that's going to be a really critical measure for Barack Obama as a gauge of his re-election chances.
You either have to get, if you're President Obama's strategist, you have to get his approval rating up higher, or you have to make sure that the Republican opponent's approval rating is even lower, that the opponent is even less acceptable than the president.
And they have a lot of money and a lot of thought. The Obama campaign is given to just that, right? So whoever the nominee is, they're going to go right after him or her, no question about it. Finally, most interesting finding of the week, some Gallup analysis we did on the 1% people making $500,000 a year or more. Of course, that would include you and me, Susan, of course, goes without saying. Yeah. But we put 60 polls together to find enough of these people, looked at them politically, and they tilt somewhat Republican, but they are by no means overwhelmingly Republican. And on ideology, they're just like you, not you and me, because we're neutral, of course, but like average Americans. They're just about as conservative, moderate, liberal as the 99%.
You know, it's really extraordinary. You think of the rich as being different from the rest of us, and on questions of are you conservative, liberal, or moderate, it is almost precisely the same regardless of whether you're in the 99% or the 1%.
Yeah, and you might think from what we see that the 1% are all these highly conservative rich people wanting to hoard their money, but actually they seem to be spread out more than we would think. Maybe you see that anecdotally from the Hollywood moguls who have millions who support Obama. Clearly he has support from a lot of wealthy people, and maybe that's what we're seeing in the data.
Maybe that's right.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to follow. There's a debate, the Republican-Jewish coalition sponsoring a debate on Wednesday night, and then more debates to come until that first vote, January 3rd.
A big debate on Saturday night in Iowa where we're likely to see Newt Gingrich as the target of these second-tier candidates who want to get up to that first tier.
Well, let's watch. We'll be talking next week, and we'll analyze what happened at that debate. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters.